Axes were brought out, machetes, swords, and basically an orgy of butchery basically took place in that field.
What kind of kid were you? What were you like as a kid?
Nerd.
You were a nerd?
Yeah. So from the age of 9 until the age of 12, over 30 months period, I was able to memorize the Quran by heart.
The entire thing?
Yes, 6,236 verses. Well, growing up in Saudi Arabia in the 1980s and 90s, I mean, it's a conservative place. Women were segregated from men, even within the family. We don't see the opposite sex whatsoever. I mean, basically, they are always veiled. And so it was a different way from growing up somewhere like, the US or Australia or Europe. It's completely different.
Your father passed away when you were very, very young. But then also your mother passed away when you were 13. Do you remember what that felt like, that moment?
Devastating in many ways. I mean, basically, she was my moral compass. She was my guide, my counselor, my educator, my teacher, and at the same time, the mother. For her to depart this way, brain aneurysm, sudden, at the age of 49, threw me off track altogether, basically. So there was this sense inside me that, the jihad didn't need me, but I needed the jihad.
The battle is on for a group of 15 houses seized by the Muslims. It is house-to-house combat of the most lethal kind.
The concept of jihad is a struggle, and it is a struggle against injustice. For my generation, it was the Bosnian jihad. It was a genocide, even by United Nations standards, basically. And that injustice pushed many of my friends and comrades at the time, basically, to take up arms and to go to join the Bosnian jihad at the time.
When you decided that you were going to go to Bosnia, were you hoping to be martyred?
It was the aim and the goal.
So you pack up your savings, you have a few $1,000s of savings, you get on a plane, eventually land in Bosnia. Was there ever a moment where the brutality of it, the bloodshed, made you question whether it was where you should be?
War has a brutal way of contextualizing any situation. So you feel that it's supposed to be brutal, it's supposed to be savage. But at some point, basically, I witnessed mass murder against Serbian prisoners.
So these were your enemies?
Yeah, there were enemy soldiers captured in the battlefield.
What happened?
Axes were brought out, machetes, swords, big knives, and basically an orgy of butchery basically took place in that field. That was one of the moments basically that I had that little doubt in the back of my mind basically that the war more or less had the negative effect on my comrades. I mean, they came, with such noble aim, and they left with, bitter, brutal souls.
Tell me about the first time you met Osama bin Laden.
I remember it was the summer of '96. I remember 14 of us crammed into one pickup. And all of us just looked like cattle just in the back of the pickup. Basically, we were shipped to go and see him. And he laid it out very clear. He would be taking on the Americans in order to pave the way for the creation and the re-establishment of the caliphate. We didn't give that much thought to it because basically only about 20% of jihadists in Afghanistan, 96 basically, had anything to do with Al-Qaeda. That would change a year later. We started to see their firepower, we started to see their commitment, we started to see their plan, and then a year later, I was in his presence, swearing an allegiance to him. In one of the camps in Afghanistan, I was responsible for the guarding duty roster, and there were a group of, some difficult individuals who really always told me that they are always tired of the training, their training was so demanding, and they couldn't, wake up at night in the middle of the night to do the guarding duties. So I was telling my other colleague, basically, I had it with them. I really had it with them. He said, well, why don't you negotiate with them? Basically, talk with them. I said, listen here, Farouk, you know perfectly well I do not negotiate with terrorists. The irony. I wasn't so much disturbed by what Al-Qaeda was developing. I was more disturbed by what my fellow trainees were talking about in terms of how to use what we are experimenting on against civilians. Places like cinemas, in places like nightclubs, theaters. That more or less was against what I signed up for.
So, at some point you make a decision. You're going to get out. What was your plan?
So, a year ago, I was struck with malaria and typhoid. I lost half of my weight and almost died. I was taken to Qatar for treatment, and then I returned. I remember the hospital there were telling me, you need to come back a year later just to check that there is no lasting damage. I used that as the excuse, as a pretext. The next day, basically, I was the guest of the Qatari intelligence service. A guest, yes, you can. Yeah. Basically, a guest who have to answer lots of questions. I was given the choice either to work with one of the major intelligence agencies around the world, whether it is in the UK or France and the US. I only had half an hour to make my mind, and I was thinking really frantically, does it have to be this way? And I was telling myself, well, yeah, maybe it has to be this way, because once you are in this game, there is no going out. It's not going to be easy.
So you just turned 20 years old. They taught you how to be a spy. So when you're out on the street, how can you tell when somebody's following you?
First of all, the most important thing is you have to have the confusing pace. People will be always either fast walking or slow walking. You have to be somewhere in the middle there, in a way that is different from everyone else in the street. When you spot someone who is at the same speed as you, then you should be worried. Use reflective surfaces, a big shop window which will expose the street behind you. You will see if there are any people who are following you. If the same combination of clothes seems to be familiar and following you everywhere, then you have to be worried.
How can you tell when somebody doesn't trust you?
The eyes.
Yeah?
You can feel it. You can feel that tension. You can feel basically someone is withholding something from you. They are economic with their answers. So once you feel that, you give that person a lot of room. And the most important thing, in espionage, in human intelligence gathering, don't ask questions. I know it's counterintuitive, but do not ask questions.
Well, explain to me the art of just letting information come to you then. How do you do that?
By volunteering information.
Right.
So I want to know what you had for breakfast this morning. I would be saying basically, well, I had an omelette. What an omelette it was, basically. It was such a delicious one, and I had it with brown toast and everything and all of that. And the other person is expected basically to chip in and to say basically, yes, they had porridge with banana and honey or whatever. So that's it. You start guiding them towards divulging information without the need to ask questions.
How were you outed as a spy?
I remember I was in Paris. It was summer 2006. I received a text message from an Al-Qaeda associate of mine from the Gulf. He was telling me, go to the Times Magazine website. What the hell is this? It says, human intelligence source uncover a plot to attack New York subway using chemical weapons. Yeah. And I realized basically that I was a source. It contained leaked intelligence from the CIA, and stupidly they used my first real name. Immediately called my handlers back in London, even though it was Sunday, and I was told basically that, well, sorry to tell you, but your spying days are over. And that's when it was decided basically I'll be going into banking, which is another form of terrorism actually, in my opinion.
There's a fatwa out on you.
Indeed.
What level of fear do you operate under currently?
I'm not reckless, but I'm not fearful at the same time. The average spy lasts about 11 months. That's the life expectancy. 11 months, and either they are out of the game or buried 6 feet under somewhere. I lasted 8 years, and I think that took its toll on me in terms of stress and health-wise, and so therefore I thought maybe it was the right time. It happened at the right time. I just take precautions, I take extra precautions. You know, if anything will happen to me, it will happen because of God's will. I believe in God's will, but at the same time, I don't live my life in fear.
Ayman, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.